Create otherworldly bonds when Revenants brandish scepters. That's a slightly odd title anyway, but here we go. We've got another weapon, guys, and it's going to be Scepter. And you know what? It's going to be Melee Scepter. We should have seen this one coming, to be honest. But not just Melee Scepter, it is Melee Lightsaber Scepter. Check this out. We've got some crazy animations. Prepare for your eyeballs to be destroyed when you have a bunch of these going about the place. It's a really good one, though. This is a really exciting weapon. Only 3 skills, but believe me, they've really gone all out to make these rather exciting. So, once again, we've got a little bit of a hybrid weapon here. I think it's leaning a bit towards support. So definitely expect to see this on your heal Revenant, that's for sure. But there's a bit of damage in there, power damage it looks like, with a lot of AoE damage. Lots of cleave power damage with some single target stuff as well. It's a very interesting, versatile weapon that has a lot of different ideas going on there. Might be hard to get full value out of it. I feel like this is a weapon that you're almost going to pick the things to focus on certain builds, and then you might kind of like, the other ones will be like a little bit of a bonus left on the edge there, because it's really hard to make like a power hybrid build just because of the way the attributes work in the game. But anyway, let's get into it. So, look at this. Revenants wield scepters in an unorthodox way that is unique to their profession. Having observed the Cryptus in battle, they draw upon their ability to connect individuals together using the scepter as a conduit. They use this conduit to channel energies between targets, strengthening allies and debilitating enemies. Very exciting. The Revenant's auto attack chain projects a concentrated stream of energy from the tip of the scepter, which they wield like a blade to swing in a wide arc, damaging multiple enemies. The first attack is a basic attack. The follow-up is grants might, and the third one hits in a 360 AoE around the player, which is really cool. There are not that many abilities like that. Especially not on an auto attack, and it applies barrier to allies on impact. Blossoming Aura infuses an enemy target with energy, dealing damage over time. After delay, it explodes, damaging the enemy again and granting barrier to allies. So these 2 abilities already going to be amazing for Herald. Like, barrier access on heal Herald, bear in mind it's getting Aegis access on the shield, more AoE healing on the shield, and we now have this Scepter weapon that's going to have barrier access. This means that Herald at this point is the absolute ultimate complete package. It's going to have every boon and barrier. This is... if this build doesn't end up busted, I'm going to be pretty surprised, especially on the auto attack. This amount of passive barrier might be scary, depending on the numbers. Maybe it's not going to scale super well, but bear in mind, they actually removed this from heal mech because of the passive, this constant sustain that was going on there. You combine this passive extra sustain, kind of adding extra health to your allies, essentially. Well, the massive healing and sustain capacities from the regeneration on Heal Herald. You've got Aegis now. You've still got really good healing on your staff and on your shield. It's going to be insane. In fact, this might be so good that you actually end up kind of using staff as your offset, whereas now you kind of, a lot of the time, you're going to be like trying to keep healing on staff and so on, and using your CC and blocks. Now it might be this auto attack, and the second skill might be so good on Heal Herald that it kind of changes the playstyle up a little bit, and you end up using this a lot, like sustaining that barrier, using the Aegis, and then swapping to staff for like a more of a utility pick. Especially seeing as you're getting a lot more healing on shield now, with the 5th skill also being a pulse heal, a very strong pulse heal as well, actually, on this. This could really switch up Heal Herald, which is very exciting, you know, because the way you got to think about this is, imagine if this kind of gives everyone in your subgroup 2,000 barrier kind of all the time, and it spikes up a little bit when you get your Blossoming Aura off. That's like adding 200 vitality to everyone in your group. That is very good. Like, if you could take that as, say, a trait, you definitely would. That's a very powerful thing to be able to buff everyone's maximum health. Makes them so much less susceptible to damage. Especially seeing as you can kind of heal people up under it as well. It's almost like better, right? It's like a buffer. If you barrier someone who's low, you can heal them while they have that barrier. It's a kind of very interesting interaction that you can have there. Barrier is very strong. Now, I think the devs are aware of this. They might be fairly conservative, so if anything, I'm expecting the barrier to be not that insane. Maybe that's absolute coping with me. Maybe it will be totally broken. But I think the devs know what they're doing. They understand how good barrier is. Although, well, I guess, you know, Heal Scourge. Maybe they like a little bit of barrier about the place there as well. But yeah, that's Bit of a meme, bit of a meme. And yeah, this is another really cool thing about this. It has a melee auto attack, but it looks like the other abilities are actually ranged. So this second skill here is, you can cast it at range, but you need to get into melee range in order to get that detonation, to get that barrier. And there's a really fun thing here. I love this. I hope we see more designs like this on future weapons. Check this out. This effect can be strengthened by striking the enemy with auto attacks. So the second skill has an interaction with your auto attack. I love that. I love it when different abilities actually have this kind of synergy together, and it rewards you for just getting in there and understanding that there's a bonus effect for using some of your other toolkit as well. Really fun. I love this. Makes the weapon just so much more dynamic and so much more interesting. Even though it doesn't add an extra skill or another button, there's this depth to it that's been added because of this interaction between the auto attack and the second skill. Big fan of that. And honestly, looking at this weapon, and to be frank, all of the other weapons that we've seen so far, makes me very excited for if ArenaNet choose to rework other weapons in the future that maybe aren't seeing as much play as they would like, or even eventually kind of making all weapons have this type of design where different abilities are more interactive. I think that really opens up decision-making and choices while you're playing. I think Guild Wars 2 has always struggled with having this kind of press this, then this, then this, then this. There's no variety, right? Like, you're just button mashing, right, a lot of the time. And I think designed like this can actually really open that up to making a much more dynamic playstyle, especially in PvE, which I think is really cool. Big fan of that. I like it. And now we go. Here's the third skill. This is a fun one too. Otherworldly Bond is an upkeep skill that creates a spiritual tether. So you drain energy to use this, to maintain this, between you and your target. The tether has differing effects based on whether the target is an ally or an enemy. When used on an ally, the tether continually grants might to the target and allies around you. When an enemy is being tethered, the target will instead be inflicted with vulnerability and take additional strike damage from the Revenant. The tether can be manually broken with the accompanying follow-up deactivate, and that's so you can stop draining your energy, basically, or if you go too far away. And like Blossoming Aura, if you attack, you get a bonus value. So if you get your auto attacks off, it also empowers this ability too. But look, it's not over. When the tether reaches maximum strength, the Revenant gains a new follow-up skill called Otherworldly Attraction. The ally version, you teleport to your tethered target, and you got Barrier. Again, another AoE barrier. Very juicy. When an enemy is targeted, it pulls them to you, and you get vulnerability. So actually some good utility, because pull is a really useful bit of CC to have in any game mode. You might be pulling an ad towards you in PvE, or of course a player to you in PvP or something like that. And both of these effects are actually very strong. Now, I'm sure some people are not going to be happy about allied targeting, and it is a bit of a pain to use. The game control support is a bit iffy around this area, but I think this could be quite fun to use, if only for the more offensive option there as well. And I think this could be really exciting for some more damage-oriented builds on single target. You know, I can imagine playing a Herald or something, and, you know, you line up all of your modifiers, right? You're lining up your burst of strength, you're lining up your impossible odds, and then you're lining up this tether as well at the same time that will then get stronger and stronger, making your target take more and more damage from all of those modifiers simultaneously. It is a little bit difficult to say without looking at the numbers. Is this going to be a potential weapon for, let's say, a DPS Herald or more offensive builds in competitive play? It's really hard to say. We don't know the numbers, right? But certainly for PvE, like, is there a universe or something like this could have some kind of relevance? Maybe, right? Like, you know, damage modifier is always good, especially if you can line it up with all the other things that various professions have, various classes have. There's something going on there, potentially. The energy cost is an issue as well. We need to see the upkeep cost for this ability, because certain rev builds are very energy starved, right? Depending on what utility skills there are, especially in competitive, you can be very energy starved in PvP and world versus world sometimes. So that could be a potential issue that limits the effectiveness, but you can stop it, right? You can stop channeling the tether if you do completely run out of juice in this regard. But yeah, the way I'm seeing this, I'm definitely seeing more of a support angle here. You know, like 3 skills that essentially have AoE barrier on them. I mean, that's kind of hard to make that bad just because of how strong we've seen AoE Barrier perform, especially when we think about the build that I'm really seeing this as a shoe-in for, which is Heal Herald, that we're replacing the Mace, because Mace is alright, you know, get a bit of extra free might on that and some DPS, but pretty insubstantial at the end of the day. Might ramp up is so fast these days, it's not super relevant, to be perfectly honest. And hell, this actually gives might as well, right? Like, the tether actually gives might if you use it on allies, so yeah, it kind of has that functionality attached to it as well. which is pretty interesting. 3 sources of barrier really turn Heal Herald into the Omega complete package, and potentially insanely strong. Like, if you can burst up to like 5k barrier, you're in the range where you can kind of just start deleting a lot of mechanics, especially in, you know, like most instance content scenarios, like very easily, especially combined with that Aegis that you'll have on your shield set when you are using this at the same time. I'd almost be a little bit worried about some kind of bunker rev in PvP with this, but I'm pretty sure they won't let that happen. They'll be conservative there, I think. Heal Herald isn't really a thing in PvP. It is in World versus World, of course. There's plenty of support Revenant builds that do pretty well there. And this, you know, again, like AoE barrier is just going to be nice to have there. Like that might fit into those builds pretty comfortably. PvP might be the weirdest one. It has the potential to be great evil. Like, I think a lot of people have nightmares about Bunker Herald, not the most enjoyable build to play against. I'm sure we don't really want that to come back. But it would be cool, you know, like I think they're trying to push Heal Warrior in PvP a little bit with staff. And, you know, support variety has been a weak point of PvP for a long time. So it would be really cool to see these archetypes kind of push there. Probably need a stun break on Ventari, to be perfectly honest with you, to make it work, because otherwise you're simply so vulnerable on that healing set, right? Where you need a stun break in PvP, and Rev getting locked out of it is always going to be a bit of a problem in that regard. But yeah. It is what it is, my friends. It is what it is. I think a really cool weapon, really making the most of 3 skills. It's not a surprise to me that the ArenaNet really made some cool interactions here, saying as this is just a main hand, right? They have less skills to work with. So they made sure that the auto attack adds depth to the other abilities. And there's, of course, like, these abilities are multifaceted, right? It's doing damage and it's doing barrier. It's range, but you need to be in melee to get the barrier as well, right? So you have to be careful with your positioning. Your allies can almost start playing around it as well. Same with this skill as well. You know, it has a lot of functionality. It has allied targeting, enemy targeting. Then it has the fully charged up skill, maximum strength, right? Then you get the follow-up, right, that you can then use. So there's a lot going on here. Fits into, I could definitely see this fitting into a couple of builds out there as well. Heal Renegade is going to be made better by this as well. I think Heal Renegade is... It's still copium, in my opinion, in PvE. A little bit of copium there, to be perfectly honest with you. But yeah, that build's got other issues, but you know, it's another tool in the toolkit for that build. You know, maybe one day it will come back. I feel like it was never truly alive, to be honest, except maybe in Fractals. It was never the best build ever, to be perfectly honest, but that's how it goes. But yeah, it is a good day to be a Heal Herald. That's what I've got to say about this. And you know what? It does look pretty cool as well. And shout out to ArenaNet for making cool characters. You know, I like this Revenant character. They look pretty cool, you know. They've got the crazy lightsaber going on there. Didn't show much here. Not a lot of gameplay being shown off overall in the actual video. Yeah, like, wow, you killed a random trash mob in open world. That's crazy. But still... you know, I'm looking forward to the live stream, right? Like, definitely one of the builds. This is going to be a build to watch out for in that preview, right? When we have this weapon beta and the balance patch. Heal Herald, oh yeah. That is going to be a monstrous build. Yeah, wow. Yeah, I mean, just with shield, I was thinking, ooh, Heal Herald, yo! Now I'm thinking, wow. This looks pretty good. This might be the nudge to get people to stop only playing... Alacrity heal builds, you know? And it's even more bad news for Firebrand, right? Because Firebrand doesn't have barrier, and this does. I wonder if we're maybe going to see like a barrier relic at some point, although that actually sounds terrifying. Maybe we don't want that being added to the game. But anyway, that is it. Look forward to your eyes being destroyed by like 10 of these, like 10 heralds of variety, you know, various builds and playstyles, just whacking away at a world boss. Okay, it's going to be absolutely glorious. Stay tuned for that. Don't cross the streams. Like the goat, we're ghost busting here. It's very good. I love to see that. Very exciting, my friends. Very cool design on this weapon. I hope it actually does kind of set a trend, set a standard, in fact, for weapon design and skill design going forwards. Very exciting overall, actually. It makes me very confident in kind of the future of the Guild Wars 2 skill design, keeping the game pretty fresh and really creating some interesting ideas. And they've got, you know, this really shows that even without elite specs, they can make some stuff that's interesting, right? They don't have to completely rework your class mechanic to give you something to chew on and to give you a playstyle that's kind of going to come out of nowhere and be a little bit of a surprise, right? To be fair, melee Scepter was maybe a little predictable. ArenaNet loved to do stuff like that. Like, oh, you know, what if a, you know, ooh, you know, what if a pistol was melee? It'd be, oh my god, it'd be so funny if Ellie pistol is melee. Oh my god, please, ArenaNet. That would be the most brutal troll. The most brutal troll if they did that. Oh my god. Right? Like, they won't do that. Don't worry, Ellie mains. That's not happening. Oh, yeah, before we head off here, the one thing I would say is I'm almost surprised that this was not more of a ranged power weapon, because if you think about it, the slight hole in the Revenant arsenal is actually a ranged power weapon. Maybe they have plans for Hammer to just, you know, maybe even like completely rework it at some point. But yeah, it doesn't really have that. Of course, Hammer's good in World versus World, but certainly not in PvE and PvP. And, you know, Scepter could have been a ranged power weapon, potentially. Not going to be that the case. It has some ranged components, but not really. It's like a halfway thing most of the time. So that is something that maybe is going to be added down the line. You know, you can kind of say short bow, but yeah, it's more of a hybrid weapon, right? Like tends to lean towards Condi, right? Where you really see it. You know, in competitive modes, the power component is more relevant, but in PvE, a little bit less so. I would say overall. So maybe that's still a gap that needs to be filled for our Revenant friends in the future. But yeah, those are my thoughts on the new weapon coming for Revenant. Definitely one of the ones that, I think I was very interested in what they were going to see, or in what they were going to do with this. And I have to say, they have met my expectations. I was kind of hyped for the Scepter on Rev. It was maybe one of the, you know, kind of hiding in the backgrounds in the, you know, kind of, not as quite as flashy as some of the, or not quite as anticipated, perhaps, as some of the other ones. But I gotta say, yeah, good. I like it. This is pretty exciting. Scepter Revenant, guys. Okay, prepare to create otherworldly bonds when you brandish your scepter. Let's go. All right, that's it. I'm done. It's time for a raid full clear now. That's right. I'm telling YouTube what I'm doing after this, so they know what they're missing out on if they're not following the stream, or indeed watching my stream on YouTube at the same time. We love to see that, so be sure to check that out. Follow the stream, subscribe on YouTube, leave a comment, like the video, all that kind of good stuff. It's going to be big. And get ready for, like, every weapon to be support, because, yeah, so far we've got support staff, support mace, support scepter. Rifle is going to be support on Chrono. Everyone's a healer these days, guys. Welcome to Heal Wars 2. Let's go. To be fair, the reason for that is because, to be frank, support is one of the areas where many builds have their kind of absence or lack of thing that enables that build. That's why so many of them are going in this direction. And because the meta in all three game modes is very centered around support. Not a surprise to see that support is kind of a target with some of these more impactful changes. But anyway, that's it. I'm out of here. Boom!